What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. And today we're talking the November 28th, 2020 edition of Talking Smack. So Caleb Braxton and Paul Heyman hosting as always. Heyman, as he usually is, a bit flustered coming into the show, coming off the events of SmackDown the night prior, which saw Kevin Owens batter Jey Uso at the chair at the end of the show, Roman scolding Jey at the beginning of the show, Jey attacking Bryan in the middle of the show. Heyman and his boys were all over this episode, and it made for a very good episode overall, but Heyman is not doing well after seeing what Kevin Owens had to say about Roman Reigns and what he did to Jey Uso at the end of SmackDown on Friday. So he actually demands that Kevin Owens comes out first. Kevin Owens is their final guest, but he gets all angry and demands that he comes out first. Kayla says, listen, the structure is set, the format is set, we are not changing it, we're already live, so just deal with it. The first people who come on instead are Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler. They are, as they said on SmackDown, not a fan at all of the whole tag title swapping thing from the draft a month ago, how they treated them like a fucking pack of baseball cards. It was so weird, but... And I completely agree. It was done very lazily, if that's even a word. But they did beat the Profits on SmackDown. They promised to beat them again to become SmackDown Tag Team Champions in the very near future. They take a shot at Cesaro and Nakamura. And I don't know why Braxton even bothered bringing them up, because it's not like, oh, they own a victory over the Profits. They faced the Profits a couple of weeks ago. They lost, and we have not seen them as a unit since. I know Nakamura was in the dual-branded Battle Royal on the Survivor Series kickoff show. Cesaro was not, so I'm not really sure where he's been. Maybe he's sick. I have no idea. I know he's been doing other stuff online with like the Among Us shit and up, down, and whatever, but he hasn't appeared on SmackDown itself in a while, which is why I think they did Roode and Ziggler and Zayn and Corbin last week against the New Day and the Profits, because it just felt weird that Zayn and Corbin would be in there unless Cesaro was unavailable. So that's probably why they did it. And having Nakamura out there by himself would draw attention to the fact that Cesaro wasn't around, a lot like what happened on Sunday when Nakamura was in the Battle Royal and Cesaro was not. So they take a shot at them, and Dolph says the biggest difference between them and themselves, between Cesaro, Nakamura, and themselves, is that we bother to show up to work today. And they're not wrong. They went in there and they beat the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. And Heyman says to them point blank, yes, he is also a fan of the Street Profits, but he believes Roode and Ziggler to be the best team on SmackDown. And that you should want to be in the ring with an equally great team. Because if you beat them, when you beat them, it makes you look that much greater. You should always be a fan of the opposing, opponent, team, whatever, because it makes you look that much better when you eventually beat them. And he makes a great point there. Ziggler, when Kayla asked him about, who would you want to face at WrestleMania 37? He doesn't give a straight answer, obviously, probably because there's not a lot of fucking tag teams left. But he just says that the Profits are funny. Funny does not always equal money. And I can't say doesn't equal money, because that's not necessarily true. But in most cases, it doesn't. And funny doesn't mean event WrestleMania. So the next person they have on the show is Bianca Belair. And Kayla praises her attire and her custom-made attire, whatever. She says that she showed up and showed out with her custom-made gear and her win over Natalya on SmackDown, and that beating Natalya further proves why she is the EST of WWE. So Kayla pulls up the Twitter exchange that Bianca's had in the last couple of days with Bayley in regards to how Bayley called out Bianca for losing for Team SmackDown, except for the fact that Bianca pointed out that Bayley was the first one eliminated from Team SmackDown per Peyton Royce as a result of Peyton Royce beating her. So she reiterated that again here and said that I have no idea why Bayley has an issue with me. But Heyman kind of interrupts and involves himself and says that he believes that Bianca is a future champion in WWE. And she said, I come out here very confident and I kind of worry about my own stuff, but I do appreciate the compliment. So, of course, the last person they have on is Kevin Owens. Heyman shakes his hand right from the get-go and goes on this long spiel about how he respects him, he has respect for him, he was a fan of his before WWE and whatever, and that Owens doesn't like to coast, and that's why he's a fan of him. Owens doesn't buy this bullshit. He says, you say that you work for Roman Reigns, you work for this guy, you work for that guy, you only work for yourself. And I'm telling you right now, I got my sights set on Roman Reigns. I'm going after him. I'm done with the whole family drama bullshit. And I'm not a good guy. I'm not a bad guy, but I will be the guy to take that title from Roman Reigns. So obviously a lot more was said than just that, but the best part about this was that Kayla, and I like Kayla Braxton, but she was a complete non-factor during this exchange. The camera was on Owens and Heyman the entire time. They didn't talk into the mics, they just talked to each other. At the very end, Heyman actually said something to Owens, and Owens responded right into Heyman's ear, which we could hear, obviously. But he said something along the lines of, "Oh, I know you'll do the right thing," or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what he said. But it was interesting, and I love this. I mean, Kevin Owens, and as much as I love the guy, he's been doing a whole lot of nothing lately, ever since the Aleister Black feud ended, and you can even argue that that was a whole bunch of nothing too, because that never really went anywhere, aside from Owens beating Black on 3 consecutive occasions. But Owens, I thought, was great here. Heyman was his usual kind of snarmy self, and he was fantastic. I love the exchange. I would love to see an actual verbal exchange between the two on SmackDown, hopefully leading into TLC. And I said this in my SmackDown review, which is also up right now if you want to check that out, but I just think Owens is a better choice to face Roman at the pay-per-view. Now, you could do Bryan, Owens, and Reigns in a triple threat for the title, but why do that when you can get 2 matches out of it? Bryan can face Jay after Jay cost him the match against Sami on SmackDown. You could do Bryan and Jay in like a chairs match or something. And then Roman and Owens for the Universal Championship straight up. I just think that makes more sense. And then save Bryan and Reigns one-on-one for the Rumble, if not WrestleMania, but probably the Rumble. I think there's other better people. And I love Bryan, but I think other people could face Roman at WrestleMania, not named Daniel Bryan. So anyway, I thought this was a very good episode. Rude and Ziggler came across well. It was on the shorter side. Bianca was great. And even the Heyman and Owens exchange. And I loved last week's episode. Last week's episode was fantastic. It may not have been the Daniel Bryan promo from last week, but it comes close. It was that good. It was very fucking good. So I like how these shows are closing off on a high note with very good promos that they're making you wait to watch until the very end. And it paid off here. Again, it's only about a 20-minute show, but if anything, if you only have time for one segment of this show, definitely check out that Owens and Heyman exchange from the final 6 to 7 minutes of the show. It was pure, just awesomeness. It was fantastic. So, a good episode overall of Talking Smack this week for November 28th, 2020. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Hit that bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up. Check out my other Talking Smack reviews in the description box down below in the playlist entitled Talking Smack Reviews. And we will be back tomorrow. If you haven't already checked out my SmackDown audio review, definitely do so from earlier on today. But we will be back tomorrow with the latest Ms. and Mrs. review. So until then, guys, have a great rest of your Thanksgiving weekend. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.